There's actually a lot of hidden details in Marvel Rivals, and the game doesn't actually tell you that they exist, and they usually just let you figure it out the hard way. But I'm gonna be a homie and help you out. So here are 28 secrets, hidden mechanics, and overlooked details in Marvel Rivals that knowing will instantly make you play better. Let's just dive into it. The first hidden ability is of course that the Punisher can't receive any CC while mid-ultimate. That makes him immune from things like stuns, sleeps, slows, or freezes, and really anything else than pure damage. That being said, there's also some pretty useful text in this video. For example, Adam Warlock can spam the first and second fire abilities by timing his primary and secondary fire, making him go rapid fire mode. The timing is a bit awkward, and one shot is a hit scan while the other one is projectile, but if you copy the inputs on the screen, you should be able to get it down eventually. Something else you see a lot of in this video that's less about tech and hidden ability is just something that a lot of players overlook. For example, it's kind of a well-known thing that Hawkeye can one-shot a squishy target, but Black Widow can't. But that's not entirely true, because that doesn't mean that Black Widow can't one-shot at all. For example, if she gets damage boosted by something like, let's say, Rocket Raccoon or Mantis, then the additional damage will give her enough damage to one-shot any squishy that she wants. Another great mechanic for Doctor Strange's time is primary fire weaving. The primary fire has a pretty slow fire rates, but a very long animation or cooldown that can be cancelled to save you time. This window lets Doctor Strange weave in something else in between every shot, something like his Dark Magic Pop, pulling up his shield, or hitting the enemy with a melee for a much higher damage per second. And this is probably also a pretty good time to tell you guys that melee damage will go through shields like the ones used by Doctor Strange and Magneto, but obviously not like bubbles or barriers such as the ones from Hulk or, I guess, Magneto's second ability. And while many do know about that fact by now, not many know that certain heroes have some abilities that will completely cancel some high-level abilities or ultimates during their charge up. One example of these is Hela. Most notably, Hela's stun can cancel ultimates like Doctor Strange's and ultimates like it that have a brief charge up before popping. Another hero that also can cancel these ultimates like Doctor Strange's would be Winter Soldier. If you guys want a full list of the heroes and the abilities, let me know in the comments, and if a lot of people want it, I'll put something together. Something else that somehow seems like a surprise to most players, even many Hulk mains at this point, is that the Hulk not only can jump around, but he can also hang onto walls indefinitely just by holding the jump key when looking at them. If you turn away from the wall, you can even engage into another jump if you would like. Some heroes can place items in the world that don't go away once they switch, which directly benefits any teammates that uses them after. One example of this is Rocket Raccoon, who can place a BRB in spawn, which drops cookies that any teammates can pick up and use for additional bonus health, and while the BRB despawns when you switch, the cookies and the rocket jump stay until they die or it gets destroyed. And while you could argue that's sort of explained by the in-game menu, the details of Magneto's ultimate is not, and knowing how much damage to expect from it makes a massive difference. First off, activating Magneto's ultimate will start charging the meatball. At the time of activation, the meatball will deal 100 damage. As the meatball keeps growing, the damage increases up to 300 if the entire animation, which also is visible with this circle in the middle of the screen, plays. That's enough to one-shot a squishy target on its own. As long as the ultimate is up, you will also eat any incoming enemy projectiles. You probably know about this part. Incoming damage is converted into energy visible here. But what you probably don't know is that in addition to how long you charge the meatball, every point that you soak up with your ultimate adds another 3 damage per point. Just keep in mind that the ball will break if it hits 100 points, but when you combine a fully charged ball both animation-wise and energy-wise, this means that at 99 charge, it will deal a maximum amount of 597 damage per meatball, assuming it's a direct hit. Moving on, we have some pretty crazy Moon Knight tech, because Moon Knight has basically a one-shot combo, especially coming off of an Onk. If you land an Onk, primary fire, instantly secondary fire to animation cancel the first primary, and then following up with another primary fire, you will absolutely melt any target. This burst deals an insane amount of damage and is really hard to outplay or really do anything about. Another Moon Knight tech is a bit simple, but I figured it's worth mentioning, which is if you use your grapple downwards, this will dash you upwards into the sky like a super jump. Something else that most people don't realize is that Namor's turrets can be stuck on walls and even the ceiling. They don't need to be thrown on the ground or in the open, so you can place them together in weird angles and surprise your enemies with some surprise damage. In the same vein, I still see tons of people who still don't understand that Penny's spider nest will send out spiders across the entire surrounding web. Well, they might understand that part, but then not realize that they can extend the spider webs with their own abilities as well as their ultimate. And this will also extend the spider bots to find more targets, so it makes sense to place your spider nest right before using your ultimate so the nanobots follow you as you chase down the enemies. Jumping back to hidden mechanics, since it has a collision hitbox, Penny actually has a, admittedly pretty hard to pull off, way to block a ton of ultimates with her snare ability. Just by shooting at them with the snare ability, she can block abilities like Iron Man's ultimate or Magneto's ultimate, again, just by throwing a low cooldown snare at it. Another really cool tech is for Psylocke, who has an incredibly high potential damage output. Thanks to how her abilities interact and how her animations are coded, she has an insanely high damage burst combo that will melt squishies. In order to pull this off, you have to hit your primary fire, then your secondary fire, primary fire again, and then dash through them as soon as the damage has connected. The dash will return your secondary fire and lead them through your enemy, which hits them with an additional chunk of damage, and when you combine all of these things together, that leaves them at very low health, if not outright kills them. Something else people might not really know about is that Scarlet Witch's primary fire might seem like it doesn't deal that much damage, and in most cases you're kind of right, but that might just be because you're hitting the wrong targets. Her primary fire deals a flat amount of damage, as well as 5% of the enemy's max health a second. This means that she can deal a ton of damage against chunky tanks, just not as much as against squishies. Combining this with the secondary fire makes her deal a pretty decent amount of damage. Another cool tech for Spider-Man is a pretty high skill technique that lets him bunny hop to fly forward. If you have turned off easy swing, then all you need to do is gain some altitude, swing yourself towards the ground, shoot a web out, and immediately afterwards jump while moving forward at the same time. The timing is a bit finicky and it isn't exactly at the same time, so if you want to learn how to do this, it will take some practice and experimenting. Moving on, not many realize that Star-Lord can also use his roll while mid-ultimate. This not only lets you dodge enemies who might be focusing you, but it also instantly reloads your weapons, like it would usually, which might just give you what you need to beam the entire enemy backline without having to wait for your reload to finish. Speaking of moving around, if Punisher jumps off a zipline, then he's gonna go zooming forwards, but many keeps doing this wrong. The optimal way of placing his zipline includes facing it upwards at, I guess, at about 45 degrees or so. As long as you can jump off after traveling forwards, then you're gonna zoom forwards. If it points slightly, you're gonna go farther. And most importantly, you won't get stuck in the ground. And since your ziplines stay for a very long time, you can even set up a ton of them to quickly get back to the point if you die. I suggest limit testing and figuring out what lineups work for you, but I'm also working on a bunch of lineups for a future video, so subscribe for that. And that is not even the only hidden mechanic Punisher has going on for him either. Punisher's turret actually blocks or tanks a ton of ultimates and types of crowd control, which can save you in a pinch. The most notable example is of course dodging Jeff's ultimate by hopping into your turret. And even less people know that while the Punisher does have two weapons, you don't actually ever have to reload them. If you use one weapon, let's say your assault rifle, and then swap to your shotgun, if you keep your shotgun up for long enough of a time, it will actually automatically reload the assault rifle by the time you jump back to it, meaning you can jump between the two different weapons and just keep firing without ever having to reload. Moving on, when it comes to most area of effect abilities, like Force or Namor's ultimate, you can actually block these with any types of shields as long as you either put a barrier on anyone inside of it or hold up a square shield, like Magneto's or Doctor Strange's, towards the center of the circle. And Venom, as you may know, can slam as long as he activates the ability anywhere in the air, but not many know that he can also activate the ability and slam towards the crosshair if he's high enough when climbing off of a wall as well. When pushing the payload, having more people on the point will obviously move it faster. Many get this wrong and think that this means that if the whole team is on the point, then surely that's gonna push the fastest, right? Well, it turns out that after some research, we learned that the point moves at its fastest when 4 players are pushing it. Anything more than that is just going to be unnecessary, and it creates a potential risk of you getting 6-man ulted. Groot's walls have additional functions other than just locking the enemy in and killing them. If Groot is close enough to the walls, that being within 20 meters of them horizontally or 40 meters vertically, then they will gain additional abilities. The short walls will slap nearby enemies for 60 damage every half of a second, and the long walls will give Groot and any nearby teammates bonus health as long as the nearby enemies take some damage. Speaking of Groot, any placeable abilities such as his walls or Penny's spider nest, I guess, will instantly be destroyed if it's touched by objectives that move, such as the payload. So be careful when placing your walls. That being said, you can place most of these abilities on top of the payload itself, which now has the added bonus of constantly moving forward as well. There are 2 things few know about the Cocoon ability that revives Warlocks or Mantis and Star-Lord during his team up. First, you don't have to Cocoon and revive. Contrary to many of our abilities, canceling the Cocoon even though you're flying around won't actually put it on cooldown. Secondly, as you are in ghost form, your respawn timer is still ticking down in the background. What this means is that if you revive after floating around for a while, assuming you have waited for long enough, you will actually instantly respawn back in your spawn. But those were all of the important bits of information I found so far. Hopefully this helps you get to the next level, and if you enjoyed the video, also you're gonna like the next one on the screen as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.